Hello and welcome to PGurus. This is Jayanthi. He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. That line from George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984 perhaps best describes colonial distortions of Indian history and the consequent history wars that persist to this day. Our history has been so distorted by some historians, or should we say distorians, that entire generations of Hindus have internalized these distortions. These historians have no understanding of our culture, our languages, our traditions, our dharma, and yet present themselves as experts. Yet every once in a while, from the depths of darkness, emerges a beacon of light that shines upon the truth fearlessly. One such beacon is our guest, Dr. Lavanya Vemsani. Dr. Vemsani is an award winning scholar and professor of history, specializing in Indian history and religions. She is a professor of history in the Department of Social Sciences at Shawnee State University. She holds not one, but two doctorates in the subjects of religious histories, religious studies, and history, which makes her exceptionally well qualified to speak on these topics. She has won many awards throughout her career, starting with her dissertation and more recently, a Fulbright Award. She researches and publishes on ancient history and religions of India, as well as current history. She has also authored many books besides being the editor of several international journals. It is my absolute privilege to welcome Dr. Vemsani today. Welcome, Dr. Vemsani.
Namaste, Jayanthi. Thank you for the great introduction, sweet and nice. It's my pleasure to be here. It's my absolute pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to start with your PhDs, not one, but two, in history and religion. That is just extraordinary. India's history and religion are deeply intertwined, and your background is just perfect. Could you talk to us a little bit about your journey?
Uh, Certainly. As you mentioned, both history and religion is deeply intertwined. I didn't plan to get two PhDs, but that's what made me get two PhDs. My first PhD is in history, studying, mainly objects and, settlement patterns, how these early people lived. It's ancient history. Then it felt like something is missing. Something is missing from this story. We are looking at these objects, but we don't know really what it was. The story is missing, right? Where is this? This is in literary sources. And we
Right.
have contemporary literary sources that we can examine. So that's what brings me to religious studies. Religious studies allows me to read the text and understand history. So I did religious studies, which is history of religion. So the history of religion, history of objects, both of them, when they're put together, they'll give us a complete history. So what we're doing
Exactly.
right now is very incomplete and twisted history, especially for India. It's a completely twisted history. It's not even history. Calling it history is appalling. So what
Yeah.
we have in place of history is, just myth making.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely right. Well said. That is just distortions that are being pushed like propaganda. And
Mhm.
standing up for the truth, of course, is a challenge in an atmosphere of propaganda. And in fact, you have been bullied and attacked repeatedly. You've received death threats. There have been repeated attempts to silence you by other academics. They've tried to call for boycotts. What does it take to speak the truth in a hostile atmosphere? I mean, what is it like to be in the trenches of truth, as it were?
Right. It is difficult. As you said, I faced all kinds of bullying, online and offline. The strange thing is, in this world, online threats, email threats, or Twitter threats, all these threats happen to everyone. But in my case, it just did not happen just on the online forums. It also happened on academic forum. So the
Yeah.
academics themselves are attacking, and they were giving the labels. So which is very difficult.
Yes.
But the work is important. If we don't write our history, who is going to write our history? Who is going to understand our history? Who is going to talk about it? So
Yes.
so it's a struggle, but I have dedicated myself to bringing out the true history. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
for
And
support. There are friends like you who support. There are many who support me.
yeah,
Of course, there are
thank you.
bulliers and attackers, but I also have good friends who support my work.
Yeah. No, I mean, thank you. Thank you for doing this selflessly, because this is not, it's much, it, this level of bullying that you have faced, and people who try to challenge the propaganda narratives that they face is nothing short of often career destroying. It takes incredible courage to do this. So it's sad that it's not well known that, for instance, that you receive death threats, or that the kind of intimidation that you face regularly. But I mean, it takes a special person to do this. So um, I would like to talk about a book that you wrote recently. It's an amazing book. In fact, yesterday was Narasimha Jayanthi, and you wrote this amazing book recently called Hinduism in Middle India, and Narasimha, the Lord of the Middle. In this book, you discuss the historical symbolism of Narasimha and show us that Hinduism is indigenous to India and it's historically embedded. And you also debunk the Aryan invasion theory. Could you just touch upon this a little bit briefly?
Okay. So
It's a lot, but
it's
just
difficult to, yeah, it's long.
yeah, we
It's a book. It's a book, right? I have to
right.
talk
So
brief.
I mean, just like a trailer, so then we can unpack it later, maybe in another show.
Right. So I'll just give the basic points. So Narasimha is the symbol of the middle. So as a symbol of the middle, uh, he is the fourth incarnation, as well as he is also connected to the geography in the middle India. So the central India is, not south, not north. It's peninsular India. It's the Indian plateau, but it's in the middle. So you would see a lot of Narasimha temples and lots of Aryan temples and Aryan spots associated with Narasimha in middle India. So Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, Telangana, Maharashtra, and Karnataka. So the plateau states. So I examined all these states and the stories from these states. So the main origin story actually places Narasimha in Ahobilam. So the region, the 100 kilometers around this region, is like the Leela Sthali of Narasimha. So lots of his incarnation, deeds, everything is placed in this area. But this area is also important for Paleolithic history. The Paleolithic caves are discovered here. Paleolithic historical hand axes were discovered here. Actually, 74,000 years ago, there was this Toba volcano eruption, right? So it actually put ash across India, and the hand axes were found within the ash in a town called Jwalapuram. The Jwala is fire, right? So the
Yes.
fireplace. So there is this fire, ash, and then the Jwalapuram. So when you look at Narasimha's incarnation and Narasimha's story, it actually brings out all these ideas all these ideas are actually preserved in the story. So it's actually like the Kala, Narasimha is like the Kala, and then the destruction and everything that happened at the time was this fire. It's like the Badavanalam, the under ocean fire.
Yeah.
So all that. So it resembles this idea of this Kalanta. So the end of time.
Yeah.
So the end of time and the Narasimha incarnation. And then the Paleolithic times actually preserve this end of time. After the Toba volcano eruption, only a small group of people survived. And then from there, we have the modern non-African population across the world. So the memory of this big calamitous event is preserved in the stories. And there is also another coincidental event. The tribal groups that reside in this area, the Chenchus, practice many of the Paleolithic practices, Paleolithic and Mesolithic practices. They still use Paleolithic equipment, fishing hooks. So there is a study that was done by one of the archaeologists, come anthropologists, correlating between their lifestyle and how it actually is very similar to the lifestyles of Paleolithic era. So this shows there is a population group that is continuing from Paleolithic era. The story also has the Paleolithic symbolism, the calamitous event symbolism in the story, embedded in the story. And the idea, the concept of the god itself is the middle, right? It shows the mixture of different things. So it shows this indigenous origin, indigenous ideas, indigenous people. If this story of incarnation is brought from somewhere outside, it wouldn't be memorializing many of the events or practices that you can find in the regional area.
Right.
Such resemblances cannot be found in the story. So this shows it was indigenous.
Yeah, it's interesting actually that you mentioned Jwalapuram. That just reminded me of one of the most powerful shlokas for Narsimha, Ugram Veeram Mahavishnam Jwalantam Sarvato Mukham. And I wonder if that's memorializing.
It reminds you of the calamitous event, right?
Yeah.
So the calamitous event itself is the god that helped revive the creation.
Yes. That might well be. That is amazing. Yeah.
So the references are in the Puranas, in the Vedas, in everything. So the objects and understanding is in the culture. The practices are in the culture, and then the ideas are in the text. When we bring them together, then we understand the whole picture.
Yes, exactly. So this sort of isolated analysis gives us distorted results, and not to mention the colonial propaganda of Aryan Dravidian, which is trying to say that Hinduism is not indigenous to India, and that Dravidians were pushed out. It's just caused so much division. For instance, in Tamil Nadu, the political fortunes literally have been built on this hateful, divisive ideology, which basically pits Hindus one against the other. So it's very exciting to me.
Somebody actually wrote, on Narasimha. Narasimha was used to Hinduize tribals.
Yeah. It's I mean, they come up with these bizarre, positions, really.
As if tribals don't know, the tribals already have their practices, and they protected the temple for centuries.
Yes, and yes, exactly.
And as if the tribals and the other people are different,
Yes, and even
years ago, over 75,000 years ago, they're all same.
Yes, I mean that is the position that they want to push, that they were different and someone else came, that there were invaders. Even with Kantara, the Varaha Rupam is quite clear. Yet they tried to position that again with the controversy, but that is indeed part of their play, that they want to indicate that Hinduism came with invaders. It is not a religion of the people of India, or not the people of India. In fact, it brings me to one of the tweets that I wanted to discuss, where you referenced. You said, why did they create these narratives? Aryan invasions, Hinduism is not a religion, epics are oppression narratives, Aryan versus Dravidians, caste versus race, and Mughals and Sultans are so Indian, and Indians are not Indians because, well, Aryans. So, I mean, that would be, could you discuss that tweet?
that is strange, right? We are here forever, and they tell us we are not Indians, but they tell everybody else is Indians. The Mughals and everybody that came were Indians and contributed to Indian culture. But we're not Indians. We haven't contributed to Indian culture. We are
Yes.
the oppressors. Where was the oppression? There is no, there is no evidence. They have no answer. And this Aryan Dravidian theory is so artificial. It has
Yes.
no basis. Even the linguistic evidence that they show is so bizarre, doesn't
Yes.
even make sense. And they have to make this word, Aryan, they have to make it into an artificial word. We had no, what was the concept of race 5,000 years ago? There was
Exactly.
no idea of race built into the books.
Right.
The Aryan is an artificially constructed word. Arya is a word for respect. And
Yes.
the evidence used to construct this word Aryan is so artificial. And then the language theory is also very basic, very, very,
Yes.
very bizarre. And this
Yes.
theory survived this long actually is the concern from the West rather than us. As far as
Yes.
India is concerned, Indian languages are Indian languages. Indians are Indians. We have
Yeah.
no other source. There is no evidence of any other source. No evidence of anybody coming into India. No
Yeah.
evidence of any languages coming into India. The
Right.
spread of languages through force, occupations, conquests is also a Western theory. In Asia,
Right.
Africa, you don't find that anywhere. Chinese languages, Chinese dialects have spread. Bantu languages have spread throughout Africa, no
Mhm.
occupations. Indian languages share large amount of vocabulary. Sanskrit vocabulary is actually the root vocabulary for all the languages of India. We share
Right.
even Tamil
Right.
shares 60% of its vocabulary with Tamil.
Exactly. Exactly.
Telugu and Kannada, you already know they
Yeah.
are 80%, more than 80%.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and Malayalam is 90%. Malayalam is
Yes.
Sanskrit derived
Yeah.
language. So
Exactly.
uh, so where is this theory? Where is this Dravidian? If Dravidian languages are independent, why do they have more than 80% Sanskrit in them? If you take out 80%, there is nothing, right? What kind of language survives with 20% words?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And yeah.
as
Go
far
ahead.
back as it goes, there is no evidence. There is no evidence of people coming. And as I already spoke about my paper on genetic history doesn't show any people arriving anywhere. And the languages, bizarre theory really don't stand any examination. Closer examination makes it uh, fall to nothing.
Right, right. And this race theory, which you mentioned, that was a popular tool for the colonizer. In fact, they employed a similar theory wherever they went, and including in Africa. A lot of people don't realize this. They think that, oh, Aryan Dravidian, it's just something very scientific they came up with. No, they came up with the same sort of nonsensical race theory that there's light-skinned invaders came from somewhere else, and there were the dark-skinned people who were oppressed. Same thing happened with which caused, in fact, a genocide in many parts of Africa, the Hutus and Tutsis.
Yeah,
They literally this was a consequence of their version of the Aryan Dravidian theory. So
right,
it's very dangerous, really. It's
right,
creates so much hate and
right.
bigotry, and it has to be called out.
They used the same theory everywhere. So anywhere they conquered, the basic theory is light-skinned people came from north and
Yes,
occupied and oppressed the darker-skinned southern people. So the theory
yes,
doesn't change. It's always the light-skinned
yeah,
versus the dark-skinned. And we don't see that outlay in India, but still they use it. And they're so
right,
confused. They use it for many purposes. They say it is caste, the upper caste versus lower caste, but it doesn't work. And they say it's North India versus South India because of the language difference. But where is the difference? The North India
right,
versus South India, the languages are so similar,
right,
right?
right.
The
It's the
theories might
similarity that
divide them,
stands out.
but the similarity is so easily noticeable.
Yes, yes.
If the languages are
Anyone?
so different, why would they have 80% similarity, right? European
Yeah,
languages, they say European languages are so similar, but they share only 60% similarity.
yeah.
South
And
Indian
even
languages share more than that.
yeah,
So they should be
the,
cognate languages.
yes. I mean, there may be differences, but the cultural continuity is so visible, and the idioms even that we use. In fact, it just highlights the cultural continuity rather than even if there were two language groups that came out of this land. It's a large geographical area, so there's no reason why we couldn't have a lot of development that happened because it's been continuously inhabited for so long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the point, right? We can have two languages or 100 languages. There is the cultural similarity and a shared
Yes.
language and shared culture. The
Exactly.
languages are also, so shared. That's the point.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course, we
Yeah.
might differ, we might evolve, but we all have considerable similarities.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and the curious thing is, while they deny the indigeneity of the people, of the culture, and of the languages and of the people, there is this, a simultaneous effort to whitewash Islamic invasions
Right.
that you pointed out in the tweet, and to deny the colonizing nature of Islamic rule, because apparently the invaders became settlers. But isn't that, in fact, settler colonialism? I mean, they didn't assimilate or adopt the local religion, language, scripts, or beliefs. The religion of the state was Islam, the language of the court was Persian, they used an Arabic script. Is very representative Islamic rule of settler colonialism that occurred in the Americas or, say, South Africa. I mean, how is this different?
Right. Colonialism in India was not very clearly understood, not very clearly studied. Colonialism actually comes with certain features. The features are foreign language, foreign culture, foreign dress, foreign systems of administration, in addition to economic exploitation. All these
Right.
5 features are found in Islamic rule in India. There
Exactly.
was this administration, foreign administration imposed on the people, foreign language, dress and code imposed on the people, foreign culture and religion imposed on the people. They were forced to convert. Foreign administration and legal code is also imposed. The language that people did not know, people have to speak it. And
Right.
the wars were declared unilaterally. So the
Right.
colonialism always comes with the unilateral declaration of wars. So
Right.
somehow the natives are wrong, they are doing everything wrong, and then a war is declared on the natives, and it is
Yes.
declared always from the invader side, and the
Right.
invaders find everything wrong with the native culture. So that's what happened when India was occupied. So
Right.
everything that is within India is deemed to be unnecessary or um, not worthy of respect.
Yes.
Anytime you read any invaders, if you read Al Hind, he actually directly says these people are so silly. Their deities, their religion, their food, everything is so silly. It's not just
Yes.
it's not just Al Hind. It's not just the author that is talking there. He was actually representing the cultural understanding of India, of Indians, that was prevalent in that time among themselves at that time. So
Right.
this shows
Right.
they were really invaders. They were occupying, and they know in their mind that they are different. These different people have to be oppressed and changed. They have that
Right.
in their administrative policies. If it's not oppressive, why would the taxes be increased to 50%? Why would they have these slave markets? Why would they
Yes.
lynch the people who could not pay their taxes? Why would they ask
Right.
people to convert? Why would they
Yes.
have all these slaves? The
Yeah.
last slave market in Delhi was actually closed by Akbar in 1560s or something. So slave markets flourished between the 13th, 12th century, actually 12th century
Yes.
to so 1560. So how can this be useful or not colonizing tendency? This is
Yes.
equally colonizing. It should be called settler colonizer
Yes.
colonialism.
Yes. Absolutely. I think that language really needs to be changed.
It
And
needs to be changed.
yeah, I mean, just because a lot of people are in this sort of delusion that it's only European Western colonization, and in fact, the whole slavery part that you alluded to as well. we were, there was incredible enslavement of Hindus. It is simply not discussed, when you talk about slavery. And in fact, the Arab slave trade is older and longer running than the transatlantic slave trade. And in India, of course, the slave markets were very active. And I think you once mentioned that Multan was one of the
Bhutan was the
most,
largest slave market.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so
The
that's something
largest slave
again.
market of the world.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
how
And so,
many of our Indians might have been enslaved between 12th century to 16th century?
yeah, yeah. And while there's all this discussion about slavery in the West, there's literally no recognition even of this sort of massive enslavement that took place. And when you have enslavement, when you have jizya, when you have people being force converted or killed, called Kafurs. Basically, it bears all the hallmarks of a colonizer, like you said. They fundamentally thought that the religion of the natives was backward and savage. So, just like every other colonizer. So, how is that different?
They said as much. They said as much. They wrote it in their books. They were not ashamed of what they were doing. They were
Yes.
proud of what they were doing. The historians were not willing to admit it, but they were willing to admit it, and they were willing to happily say it.
Yeah, they've left, dozens and dozens and dozens of books,
Dozens and
maybe not
dozens of
dozens, much
sources.
more than that,
Yeah.
explaining in great detail what they
Mhm,
thought.
mhm.
And so we don't have to venture to guess because they were quite clear about it. And it gets whitewashed, and we get gaslit that nothing happened, and how dare you speak of this.
Mhm.
So that I was really thankful that you
The
brought that up.
Malik Kafur's raids, he went 3 raids to south. Um, so all of the raids he recorded very carefully. The people he got enslaved, imprisoned people, and then the diamonds and necklaces, gold he took from Srirangam temple, from Varangal, that Chandi temple. So
Yeah.
everything is documented. It's not like, it's not there. It is clearly well documented.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when the truth is sort of suffocated, and we are offered a distorted version, it skews the way we understand ourselves and our culture. And that's what we're facing today, and that's why we need to unearth that, in which I really applaud the work that you're doing with unearthing and drawing the connections. One of the things that I find most inspiring about your work is your ability. I mean, well, first of all, your knowledge is broad and deep, and you have a cultural understanding, which makes it possible for you to see the larger picture and to connect the dots, and not
Thanks.
sort of distorted explanations that and bizarre explanations that they often come up with. So I really thank you, Dr. Vemsani. I can't thank you enough. There's just so much to unpack here, and I hope we can continue these conversations in much greater detail in the future, because there is such a dire need for fact-based history, and we're just so glad you're here to enlighten us.
Thank you, Jayanthi.
Yeah,
Thank you, and anytime.
yeah. And finally, we must never forget that colonial consciousness continues to damage our examination of Indian history and culture. The denial and distortion of Indian history destroys our very understanding of ourselves. To quote George Orwell again, the most effective way to destroy a people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. However, with brave hearts like Dr. Vemsani, who is no doubt empowered by Narasimha himself, we hope to see the deconstruction of disinformation and the emergence of truth. Thank you again, Dr. Vemsani. Thank you so
Thank,
much.
Thank you so much.